Well, good morning, everyone. We're really happy to have you here this morning. In that film clip, you saw the voices, you heard the voices, and you saw the faces of survivors. And trafficking in persons is a serious challenge that we have globally. And for us, for the U.S. government, President Obama in January 2015 proclaimed that month as January as National Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month. And this is intended, again, to bring to justice, to prosecute trafficking and traffickers and help the victims recover from the horrendous challenges that they had being trafficked. But as far as the activities of the U.S. government, we know that this scourge is transnational, and there are criminal organizations who drive it. It's not limited to one country. It crosses borders, and it's not, doesn't happen only in poor countries. It happens in rich countries as well. And as somebody mentioned earlier, Abtayo mentioned earlier, this is really an industry that generates about $150 billion. This is illegal money that's generated through trafficking of persons. So when we look at, who is trafficked, you could look at, for example, women or girls or boys who are trafficked for sex. The same groups who are also trafficked for servitude, for labor, and to serve as child soldiers. So what's happening is we're looking at groups within a country or within neighboring countries or even far away who come together just for that purpose. This is, people refer to trafficking in persons as the 21st century slavery, and it really is. What it means is people are humiliated, are degraded by traffickers who basically do it for money because they get money by doing the work that they do. So what I'd like to do now is to introduce Bukola Orila, and she is the reason why we're here today. And you saw her in the last clip that we saw. So Bukola, come over. Yeah. She's actually, a professional colleague. She was a journalist. She practiced journalism. And she became a victim and experienced all the horrible things that happened to victims for over 2 years. And she survived it. She is telling her story in order to protect people and to help people. And, in the earlier film that we saw, they were saying, actually, the voices of those who've gone through it and survived it is very strong in helping people understand how serious this scourge is, and to create awareness, especially among young people who think that, yes, I'm offered a job, yes, I want to see another country, hoping that everything is, the way they heard it. But once they're, removed from their environment, horrible things happen to them. And that's why we want to hear from Bukola, and she'll be here for 2 weeks. We'll be going to universities, and this is an opportunity for the media to really highlight and report on what's happening in trafficking in persons, because it's real, it's in our communities, and the media has to do a better job in reporting and increasing awareness of this scourge. Thank you so much.
This morning I'll be reading a speech. I'm not so used to reading speeches. I like to speak from my heart, but I will try hard to read a speech. It is with sincere gratitude that I speak about human trafficking, an issue that affects our social and economic well-being today. Human trafficking is the modern-day slavery and it affects everybody all around the world. It is even more disturbing that human trafficking has become one of the fastest growing crimes, generating billions of dollars. The International Labour Organization estimates that forced labor and human trafficking is a $150 billion industry. So you can imagine how much is being generated from this crime every year. More so, the organization estimates that there are 20.9 million victims of human trafficking around the world, and there are 5.5 million children who are being trafficked, and among them were 55% women and girls. Although we hear more about women and girls being trafficked, there are also boys being trafficked, and there are men being trafficked. And as you could see in the video, those people interviewed were real victims that survived. So those men that spoke were actual victims that became survivors. So men are also trafficked. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of statistics on men, but let's have it at the back of our mind that men are not just perpetrators. Perpetrators could also be women. The Secretary of State, John F. Kerry, noted in the human trafficking report that came out recently that this year's report focuses especially on the global market, because since it's a global issue, there is the need to look into how it's happening in every country around the world and how it affects everybody around the world. And according to him, he highlighted the hidden risks that workers may encounter. What happens is that sometimes people do travel for work visas. Those work visas sometimes could become potential trap for human trafficking. Sometimes people go out to work, but when they get over there, it's not the job that they promised that they end up doing. Sometimes the job is to work at a hotel, but when they get to the other side, they're working as prostitutes and sleeping with several men every night. And sometimes some of them are just locked up in the house, working several hours without rest. And this affects everybody, including people from Nigeria. And at this junction, I would like to emphasize that, seeking greener pastures abroad does not necessarily translate to better life. It could also be potential trap to becoming a victim of human trafficking. And I am a perfect example of that. I decided to put my story to my face in order for people to know that this is real, and I'm glad that here today there are colleagues who knew me before I traveled to the United States, to be able to know that this is the same Bukola they knew before she traveled, and it's the same Bukola telling the story. And
Thank you very much, Bukola Oyola. Before we proceed to the Q&A session, I'd like to specially recognize the Head of Research Unit of the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, Nigeria. That's in person of Mr. Saadu Mustafa. Please kindly come forward here and take a seat in the front. And as he sits down, I would like to say that you're actually bound to come to the front and just give us a brief remarks about what NAPTIP has been doing over the years. If you have some statistics, please do share with us and just give us insight about what Nigerians, the media and stakeholders really need to know about trafficking in persons at its borders on the Nigerian angle. Thank you. Round of applause for him, sir.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My appreciation goes to the U.S. Consulate, the acting consulate in Lagos. Then Miss Eniola, Bukola Oriola, gentlemen of the press, good morning once again. National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, was established in 2003 through the act of the parliament, and it was signed into law by the president. The agency, the headquarters of the agency is in Abuja, while it has, as we speak now, we have 8 zonal commands all over the country. Lagos is one of them, and Lagos covers the whole of Southwest, that is, Oyo State, Ogun State, Osun State, Lagos State, Ondo State, and Ekiti State. That's where Lagos covers. Our Director General is Barrister Beatrice Jediagba, while my zonal commander in Lagos is Mr. Famakin Alani Joseph. The agency is the focal agency that coordinates all the laws regarding human trafficking in Nigeria. It is part of its mandate is to collaborate with partners to ensure that human trafficking is either totally eradicated or reduced to the barest minimum. Actually, to be totally eradicated. That is the essence. The agency adopts 4-pronged strategy, which we summarize as 4 Ps. We have the prevention, the protection, the prosecution, and the partnership. In prevention, we adopt the strategy of getting to the victim before the trafficker gets to them. That is through sensitization, awareness creation. We go to schools and other places, markets, places, and other places to create awareness about the agency. In protection, the protection aspect is also further broken into 3 Rs. That is rescue, rehabilitation, and reintegration of the victim.
Now we'll go into the session for questions and answers, and all questions relating to the U.S. government effort towards combating human trafficking will go directly to ACG Diab, while questions relating to the tour itself, the Human Trafficking Awareness Tour of colleges and universities, will go to Bukola Oyola, while questions dealing with all sorts relating to Nigerian government efforts towards combating trafficking will go to Mr. Saadu Mustafa, who is the head of research unit of NAPTIP. And so I'm sure we all have some questions to ask. I'm sure we have some queries to make about the tour, what prompted this tour, and stuff like that. So we have just some 15 minutes for this session. So would just signify by raising of our hands. Okay, Mr. Kendi Adiaga. Just straight to the question, sir.
I want to appreciate Bukola for making out time to give our story, as it were. I just want to be clarified on the figures that is given. I heard also the acting DG talk about $150 billion generated through trafficking. I don't know how this figure comes about. Is it throughout the world or just then the in your story I want to know how it happened when you talked about your husband. Are you saying you are already legally married with the person and he still went ahead to do what he did? Then to the agency in Nigeria that is responsible for this, we'd like you to tell us if there have been any prosecution in terms of those that have been trafficked, and also I just want to say this is the first time I'm hearing somebody talk about it. I've heard of the agency before now, except that we don't get to know so much about the agency in order for people to know what, how they are being trafficked. Again, the last one, to anything. Of course, you did say men and women can be trafficked. Why? Because here I saw advocates, victims, empowered, surveyor. The Eniton story. Can you share the Eniton? Why did you come about, I mean, how did you come about Eniton? Because you are Bukola. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Those questions. We'll just go by this order. ACTD Gibran will clarify the $150 billion angle, then go back to Eniton story, then back to narrative. Thank you. Mark, could you just step up? Thank you.
So quickly to respond to that question, it's $150 billion and it's across the world internationally. And this figure is provided by the International Labor Organization. And it includes, you know, revenue generated by using men and women who've been trafficked to work in factories, you know, all the clothes that we wear, the food that we eat, all of that is taken into consideration. Are the people who are working in these factories paid their fair share, you know, to benefit themselves and the families? But that's not the case. So the $150 billion that we talked about is are revenues generated through illegal activities, using people and not providing them the compensation that they need. Does that answer your question?
Thank you for that. Thank you, Ma, for that insight. Then back to Bukola and Yola. Bukola or Yola, I'm sorry, Madam, please.
Thank you for those questions. I think your first question about my husband, it has a very long answer. So what I will say is I will just give a brief. However, I've made my book available for free full preview online, where you can go and read the full story. I married my husband traditionally, and in Nigeria, you know, traditional marriage is a sitting of the families and agreeing. So that was how I married my husband. And boys and girls, or boys and men being trafficked is true. Like you watch those videos, the video showed men sharing their story, how they were trafficked. And also when people go out, for example, let me give you real examples. Somebody could send their kid abroad to go to school. When you apply for a student visa in the U.S. Consulate, for example, if you are not enrolled by a certain time, you become out of status. True or false? You get out of status if you are not enrolled according to the U.S. law, because your visa is a student visa and you have to be enrolled in school. Sometimes when kids or even teenagers or even adults get to the other side, they keep them in the house. In Lagos, for example, even in Nigeria generally, you can catch the bus and go from place to place. It is not so in the US. There are some states like New York and Chicago, I think, where you can catch the buses easily. If you live in Minnesota, where I'm from, if you don't have a car, you're on your own, because you might be in a place where the bus don't get there, so you are trapped wherever you are, and as a result it's easy to isolate. And once you are kept in the house and you lose your status, that status is used against you, and that could be used against a man or a woman. And also women traffic their husbands. When people come to the embassy to apply for the spousal visas and they go, sometimes they're there in the house, they can't do anything because you're coming from Nigeria. First of all, you'll be welcomed with cultural shock, and then you don't know your way around, you don't know how to navigate, you don't know where to go to. So this person is the one telling you what to do. You sit down, you better be sitting down there. You stand up, you better be standing up. So as a result of that, you know, your self-esteem is the first thing that will be attacked. And once you lose your self-esteem, you will keep taking everything and just be hoping that death will come one day. So I'm telling you that I have helped men. I can't share a lot of their stories because some of these men are still going through the legal process. And as an advocate, I need to protect their identities. So that is how sometimes men also become victims. A man told me how he was kneeling down to be begging. A Yoruba man. Do men kneel down in Nigeria? So, and then about the Anyton story. My son is here today, Samuel. I'm grateful to God for Samuel. He is my sunshine and he is my consolation. And I have a chapter on him in my book. I could have named him Anyton, but because I covenanted with God before conceiving him and I already chose the name, God gave me the baby. I couldn't go back on my promise. I named him Samuel. But as this work began to grow bigger and bigger, because people were reaching out to me from outside of Minnesota, from outside of the United States for help, I decided to start providing direct services. So I started what is called a non-profit organization. Here they call it NGO. And Anyton is the non-profit organization. So we called it, the board decided we should make it the Anyton story. So that way, victims can relate and they can feel confident to reach out for help, because I tell you, it's hard for victims to reach out for help because they are afraid, they live in shame, but when they are able to form a trust bond, it will be easy for them to reach out. And my goal is to help them form that trust bond to be able to reach out for help. Does that answer your question? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. Then we would have to go to the NAPTIP head of research, that's Mr. Sadu Mustafa, to please attend to those questions relating to the organization. Thank you.
If I can get it right, your question was directly on how many convictions.
Prosecution.
That is conviction. Okay. So as at today, if you Google our website, that is www.naptip.gov.ng, and you'll see that as of today we have 258 convictions as of today. 258. But it's a continuous thing, because that is 2004 to 2014. This year there has been several other convictions that has not been posted. It is posted as it is recorded. There are convictions, the cases that have been concluded. Prosecutions are still so many in courts, but the cases that have been concluded, those are the ones.
Does it mean they're serving time? They're in jail?
Yes. Some have completed their jail time, some are still in jail.
Okay, thank you very much, sir, for sharing that with us. Then, I don't know if you still have people who have some questions to ask. Okay, thank you very much. Your name, media affiliation, your question.
Hi, Kaylin Hogan here from the Associated Press. Thank you so much for being here today. Carla, if I could ask you, you mentioned your fear of immigration and police when you were in the U.S. How did that potentially stop you from seeking help? How does fear of, I don't know, being deported or sent back, or the stigma when you return? I know that a lot of families, when you have familial trafficking, that fear of stigma on return can stop people seeking help. So in your case, how did that affect you? And also, I don't know if you returned to Nigeria after, but for people who are wanting to go back, how do you advise them when they come back to help them reintegrate and be rehabilitated into society? And sorry, for the consulate here as well, do they provide any support services in terms of people being sent back from the U.S. if they have been survivors of trafficking?
Thank you very much for that question.
In terms of services that do we provide any support to trafficked persons who come back to Nigeria? I could check with our consular section, but if they're not Americans, we would not be involved in those, activities. But NAPTIP, I think, would take over and provide the support that's needed, I would think.
We'd like to share some few words on helping with rehabilitation. Would you?
That is, when cases are referred to NAPTIP, it is handled as in accordance with the laid down procedure. When cases are referred to NAPTIP, it's handled in accordance with the laid down procedure. We have a law we operate with.
Thank you very much. Back to you.
Thank you for the question. First of all, how did I get help? I got help through a public health nurse. And I had been working with this nurse for over a year. Yet, I didn't say anything to her. She suspected something wasn't right, but I wouldn't tell. And what eventually happened was that because I had been threatened with police and immigration severally, he decided to put the threat to work by calling the police. And that made me to jump from the frying pan into the fire, not knowing what I was jumping into. And it was also with the help of one of my clients who asked me to call my doctor. And I said I didn't have a doctor, but she said, but you have your child here. I said, I have a public health nurse that comes to the house. And I called the nurse, and the nurse told me that there was help and that I was in the wrong place. She referred me to what is called the battered women's shelter. It was at that shelter that I started getting help. And about the stigma, that is one of my call to action. Please stop stigmatizing the victims. Help the victims. Show compassion. Show love. Most of the time, we blame the victim. That is why victims suffer so much and they continue to suffer and don't even want to get help. Please go after the perpetrators instead of blaming the victims. And my word to victims and survivors is that if they want to come back and integrate, yes, they can come back and integrate. One of the things that helped me was mental health therapy. I never knew about mental health therapy when I was in Nigeria. And in fact, when they introduced me to mental health therapy at the shelter, I didn't go for a long time because I was like, no, I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. And they say, oh, we know you're not crazy, but you need to get this help. Just come. And I'm glad that the therapist I got was a really nice woman she was patient. You see, victims' trust level have been so battered that they don't trust anybody. Even as I'm speaking to you today, I suspect everybody, including my family members. I don't trust anybody anymore. You could tell me one thing and I believe you. The next minute, I'm thinking about what you just told me, whether to believe or not to believe. You can ask those close to me. There's somebody here who's always a victim of that. I'm always changing my mind because of what I've gone through. So victims go through that, and I encourage going to mental health therapy. It does help. And I also believe that writing the book, it took me a year to write that book. In fact, the first 2 or 3 chapters took me like 3 months to write because I will be writing and I will be crying. And when I can't see anymore, I just save and leave the computer and go back at another time. And after doing it, I found out that a full body was lifted off of my shoulder. And the more I go out to share my story, I continue to feel better. So I'm not asking everybody to share their story if they don't want to share their story. I've been battered on the internet. It's just that my adage, they say, when you go to the market, you don't pay attention to the noise. You focus on the person you're negotiating with. And the people I'm negotiating with are the victims and the survivors, because I want them to get help. So I don't pay attention to all the negativity that is going on. I consider that as the noise in the marketplace. So I'm encouraging survivors and victims to reach out for help, and especially to be able to integrate, just do mental health therapy. It will help. It helps me.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. And we'll just take 2 more questions before we go. I'd like to give this mic to Marachi first. Then we'll come back to you. Thank you.
My name is Amarachi and I work with Channels TV. I wanted to know, and my question is for Bola. Did you ever call the authorities on your husband, and where is he now?
No, I never did, because I was living in fear and my legal status had expired. And that is another thing for victims, especially when you're abroad. If your legal status are expired, you constantly live in fear when the person is threatening you with the law. So I didn't call the police. I didn't even know that I could have called police on several occasions. Even at the point when police came to the house when I was pregnant at 27 months old pregnancy, and they took me to the emergency room, I didn't say anything to them. And I didn't say anything to the nurse. And all of those didn't help me in court, because it turned to the case of he said, she said. Unfortunately, the court system is looking for paper documentation or marks on your body. But how do you show the mark here or the mark that has been done here? But the legal system doesn't look at that. And eventually what happened was they advised me to seek therapy. So most of the time, victims do not call the police. They don't call the law. It is the perpetrator that calls the law most of the time, because they will be threatening you, and in order to keep you shut down, they can actually call the police on you. Whereas in the United States, we don't have contact with him. He's been warned not to come close, and we do not have contact with him. No, it was not prosecuted, because, like I said, I didn't report, and there was no formal documentation with police.
Thank you very much. Before we go to the last question, yeah, of course, that's exactly what I was about to. Thank you.
Thank you very much, In addition to what she has said, the victims sometimes, before they even leave the shores of the country, they are taken to somewhere where they make an oath, and that oath they so believe in it that for you to break them down to give you the real information you need, that oath keep ringing in their heads. So it's difficult. Then, but you know, they are hardly aware that there is protection for them everywhere. There is control mechanism whereby when you get the suspects, there is provision in the law that you could seize. Excuse me. You could seize. You could forfeit all his profits. That is through seizure mechanism and all that. There is that provision, but most of the victims are not aware of this. Even in the country where they are being trafficked, there is protection for them, but most of them will not be able to exploit due to a lack of awareness.
Sorry, it seems like there's nothing being done about the perpetrators of the trafficking itself. We're only trying to rehabilitate the victims. We are doing nothing about the perpetrators.
No, yes, when I was reading out the mandate of NAPTIP, I talked about prosecution. That is where the traffickers are tracked down, prosecuted, and they are made to face the law. There are provision. We have acts, that is NAPTIP Act 2003, amended in 2005, now repealed. Excuse me, now repealed, and we have NAPTIP Act 2015, which is currently being in use. All these, there are different sentences for traffickers. Once.
How do you find the traffickers? I'm sorry, I'm taking so much of your time. But how do you now find the traffickers?
There are several ways. Some are referred to them. We have an investigation. Okay, let me say more in YouTube about it. NAPTIP has different departments. We have a department called investigation and monitoring. This is like the police the department goes after the traffickers. As we are here now, some are on the field looking for due to some information going after some traffickers. So these traffickers are brought in, interrogated, then they are prosecuted. If they are found guilty, the law deals with that.
But nobody's going after her husband.
She didn't report.
Thank you very much for this insight. And final question, your name, your media affiliation, and straight to the question. Thank you.
I'm Toyin Adele from the Nation newspaper. Quick one for the man from NAPTIP. Can you tell us how the victims can reach NAPTIP or reach help? Because someone that is being locked in a place to do what he does not want to do or being held against their will may not be able to. So can you say something like an advice? How can the person reach you, reach help?
Thank you for that question.
We have a hotline. Oh, I'm sorry, my phone is at a reception. I don't know how I can bring that, but we have a hotline that if you call with Airtel line, it's free of charge.
Maybe you could just reel out the exact web address where they could go to.
Okay, www.naptip.gov.ng. That's the website.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming. We'd like to really appreciate distinguished journalists here seated for heeding our call, for coming around to get to hear from Bukola Oriola, who's actually sharing her story and doing a tour of colleges and universities to raise awareness about human trafficking in Nigeria. We'd also like to thank Mr. Saadu Mustafa from NAPTIP and his other colleague who actually graciously attended to this event. We thank you so very much for coming around and God bless you. And just for your information, beginning from this week, I think, next week Monday, she'll be on tour of universities including LASU, Yabatek and the like. Just say a few words about that.
So I'll be going to 5 schools. We start at Bells University on Monday, September 14 at 7:30 a.m. And then we go to Federal University of Agriculture, Abeokuta on the same day at 2 p.m. Then on Tuesday, we go to Lagos State Polytechnic at 2 p.m. And on Wednesday, we go to University of Lagos at 9 a.m. in the morning and Yaba College of Education at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. And on Thursday, we come back here for the grand finale, where you can watch a fuller version of the video you watched today.
Thank you very much for sharing that with us. And then I'm sure she will be open to one-on-one interviews and other insights into how she was trafficked, how she got help, how she actually became a survivor, and all of that.